Hey everyone, and welcome back to Booked Summary Podcast. Today, we're going to be diving deep into The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. It's by Sean Covey. Now, whether you're a teenager yourself or you just want to tap back into that mindset and energy, this book
Right.
has some seriously valuable advice for you guys. So if at any point you're like, yeah, I really resonate with this, so that's a really good point, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to keep those insights coming.
Yeah. This book is really cool because it doesn't talk down to teens. I think a lot of self-help books or books geared toward younger people, they kind of
Right.
talk to them like they're little kids. And this one really acknowledges that the teen years are intense. There's so much change happening and you're trying to figure out who you are
Right.
in the midst of all of that chaos. So instead of just giving a list of do's and don'ts, it really gives you a framework for navigating all of those challenges and making choices that lead to real happiness, not just fleeting
Right.
popularity.
Totally. And he starts with this idea of paradigms,
Yeah.
which are basically like the mental lenses through which we see the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes those lenses can get a little foggy. And that's when we end up,
Yeah.
making decisions that we might regret later.
Totally. He has a great anecdote about a woman on a train who is convinced that the guy next to her is eating her cookies. And she's fuming, ready to confront this guy, and then she realizes her cookies are safe and sound in her purse. It's kind of a funny example, but it really highlights how much our assumptions and perceptions can really distort reality. And especially, I think, for teens, those distortions can be magnified even more by
Right.
peer pressure and social media.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about all those times where you felt insecure because someone else has the newest phone or got invited to a party that you weren't invited to.
Yeah.
It's really easy to fall into that trap
Yeah.
of thinking that your worth is tied to those things. And Covey is like, hey, what if we base our lives on principles instead?
Exactly. Principles like honesty, integrity, fairness, those are universal truths that don't change with the latest trends or social media posts. They're kind of like a compass guiding you through all those sticky situations where it's really hard to know what's right.
Okay, I get that principles are important, but how does that actually help a teenager deal with everyday stuff like drama with their friends or the pressure to get good grades or...
Yeah, so he has this really powerful story about these two brothers fighting in a war, and one of the brothers gets killed.
Okay.
And the other brother, at the risk of his own life, goes back to retrieve his fallen brother's body. It's a pretty intense example, but I think it really drives home the point that, loyalty is a core principle. That can compel us to act, even in the face of, fear and danger. So imagine applying that kind of, unwavering commitment to your values in your everyday life.
Wow, I see what you mean. It's like when you stand up for a friend who's being bullied, even if it means you might become a target too. That takes a lot of courage, and that comes from loyalty.
Exactly. And that type of courage comes from building inner strength, which is what Covey calls the private victory. And he introduces this concept of the personal bank account, or PBA, which is all about your self-esteem and your self-worth.
So it's like a bank account.
Yeah.
But instead of money, you're depositing good vibes and self-respect.
Exactly. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, do a kind act or acknowledge your talents, you're making a deposit. But when you break your word or put yourself down or focus on your weaknesses, you're making a withdrawal.
Oh, I could totally relate to that. I make promises to myself all the time. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to start working out every day. And then I hit snooze 5 times and I go grab a donut. Major withdrawal.
Yeah, we've all been there. But the point is that even small deposits, like sticking to your study schedule or giving someone a genuine compliment, they can have a big impact over time.
Yeah.
And it's all about building that sense of self-worth so that those inevitable challenges come up, you're more resilient.
I love that idea. It's like you're building up the savings account of confidence and resilience to draw on when things get tough. And speaking of tough, let's talk about habit 1. Be proactive.
Be proactive.
Yeah.
This habit is all about taking ownership of your life. Proactive people, they don't just react to situations, they choose their response. Think about it like this.
Okay.
A can of soda. When it's shaken up, it explodes with pressure.
Yeah.
But a bottle of water, you can shake it all you want, and it stays calm.
Okay, that's a vivid image. So are you saying that reactive people are shaking up sodas?
Yeah.
And proactive people are cool, calm, and collected bottles of water?
Exactly. And it's not about ignoring problems or pretending like everything's fine. It's about recognizing that Even in challenging situations,
Yeah.
you have a choice in how you respond.
And Covey tells this funny story about
Yeah.
how he learned this concept from his own father.
Yeah.
And at first he was like, yeah, right, Dad. Classic teenager.
Totally. But eventually he realized how empowering it was to take responsibility even when things are tough.
He also shares a story about Dermot Reed, whose younger brother was murdered. And, revenge would be a natural, understandable reaction to that kind of tragedy.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the pain and anger he must felt. But Dermot chose a different path. He chose to honor his brother's memory by pursuing education, ultimately becoming a college football star and the first in his family to graduate.
That's incredible. He turned this unimaginable tragedy into a source of strength and inspiration.
It's a testament to the power of proactivity, choosing your response even when the situation seems impossible.
This proactivity kind of sets the stage for habit 2. Begin with the end in mind.
Begin with the end in mind.
Okay. Is this where we get a time machine?
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Not quite, but it does involve a bit of mental time travel.
Okay.
Covey asks you to imagine your own funeral.
Yeah, a little morbid, maybe.
Yeah.
But incredibly powerful. Imagine all the people that you care about are there. What do you want them to say about you? What kind of impact do you want to leave behind? Whoa, that's deep. Thinking about your own funeral really forces you to confront what truly matters, not just what's popular or trendy.
Yeah, it's about defining your values and creating a personal mission statement. This isn't like corporate jargon. This is your own personal roadmap.
Okay.
Think of it like this. If you were going on a road trip, you wouldn't just hop in the car and start driving aimlessly.
Right.
You would have a destination in mind, a map to guide you.
Totally. Otherwise, you might end up lost and frustrated.
Exactly. So a personal mission statement is like a map for your life. It helps you to make decisions that are aligned with your values and your goals, even when you're facing pressure to go in a different direction.
Oh, I remember feeling so lost in high school. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. It would have been amazing to have a personal mission statement back then.
It's a process. It takes time and reflection, but the book provides some great exercises to kind of help you get started with that.
Now, once you have that vision, that roadmap, it's time to put it into action. Which brings us to habit 3. Put first things first.
Put first things first.
And before we dive into that, if you're finding this deep dive helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to keep these insights coming.
Yes.
Absolutely. We're breaking down some seriously powerful habits here.
We are.
So put first things first. What's that all about?
This habit is all about mastering time management, which might sound boring, but trust me, it's a game changer, especially for teens who are juggling school activities, friends, life.
I remember those days. It felt like I was constantly running from one thing to the next, never really catching up.
So Covey introduces this amazing tool called the time management matrix, which divides your tasks into 4 quadrants: urgent and important. Not urgent, but important. Urgent, but not important.
So like cramming for a test the night before.
Yeah.
Would be urgent and important. But like scrolling through TikTok for hours on end would be not urgent enough.
Exactly. And the key is to spend more time in quadrant 2. Not urgent, but important. This is where you find those activities that contribute to your long-term goals and well-being. Things like planning, learning new skills, building relationships, taking care of your health.
It's about being proactive, not just reactive.
Exactly.
Right. So like scheduling study time in advance instead of waiting till the last minute to panic.
Exactly. Covey actually shares a story about his own struggle with this. He was trying to balance football and academics, and he realized that he couldn't half commit to either. He had to prioritize both. Schedule dedicated time for each end. That's what led to success in both areas.
It makes sense. If you're constantly putting out fires, those urgent and important tasks, you'll never have time for the things that really matter in the long run.
He has this great analogy of big rocks and pebbles. The big rocks are your important goals. The pebbles are the smaller, less important tasks. If you try to cram in all the pebbles first, the big rocks aren't going to fit.
So it's about scheduling those big rocks first, those important goals and activities, and then letting the pebbles kind of fall into place around them.
Exactly.
And this might sound a little overwhelming. Like you have to become this like super organized, hyper-scheduled robot.
Right. But it's actually about creating more freedom and space in your life.
More freedom through scheduling? How does that work?
Well, when you're intentional with your time, you're less likely to feel overwhelmed and stressed. You're in control, which actually frees up mental energy to focus on the things that matter most.
And speaking of focus, a big part of putting first things first is Overcoming fear and peer pressure.
Yeah, because let's face it, sticking to your priorities is really hard when everyone else seems to be doing something different.
Especially as a teenager.
Especially as a teenager. Covey actually shares a story about his own fear of public speaking. He was terrified. But he knew he couldn't let fear control his life. So he practiced, he prepared, and he faced it head on. And guess what? He became a successful public speaker. He even wrote this book, sharing his message with the world.
Wow, so even someone who writes books about effectiveness and confidence had to overcome fear. That's kind of reassuring.
It just shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. And the book emphasizes that overcoming fear, whether it's public speaking or trying something new or standing up for what you believe in, is a major deposit in your personal bank account.
Right, building that. Self-confidence and resilience we talked about.
Exactly.
And what about peer pressure? I mean, that can be so intense during the teen years. How do you suggest navigating that?
The book really highlights the importance of using your won't power. It's about having the courage to say no, even when it's hard, even when your friends aren't happy about it. You know, there's a story about a teen who was pressured by her friends to skip school and go to Chicago, and she really wanted to go. But she knew it would disappoint her mom, who had sacrificed a lot for her. So she said no.
I bet that was tough. Did she stay friends with them?
They told her to find new friends.
Huh?
Pretty harsh. But even though she was hurt, she ultimately felt good about her decision. It reinforced her values, and she learned the power of standing up for herself.
That's such a powerful lesson. True friends will respect your boundaries and your values, even if they don't always agree with them.
Exactly. And that respect is the foundation of healthy relationships, which leads us into the public victory. Those habits that help us connect with others effectively. Just like we have a personal bank account for our self-worth, Covey says we also have a relationship bank account, or RBA.
Okay.
And it works the same way. Making deposits builds trust and connection. Withdrawals can damage those relationships.
So what kind of things count as deposits in our RBA?
Keeping promises is a huge one, just like with your PBA. Being loyal, really listening to what someone has to say. We'll talk about that more with Habit 5. Apologizing sincerely when you mess up. These are all ways to show respect and strengthen that bond.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like you're investing in the relationship.
Yeah.
Putting in the effort to make it strong and healthy.
Exactly. And just like neglecting your finances can lead to debt, neglecting your RBA can lead to broken trust and strained connections.
Yeah.
Covey actually shares this pretty embarrassing story. It's about the infamous car crash incident.
Ooh, car crash.
Yeah.
This sounds juicy. Tell me more.
Well, he borrowed his dad's car without permission, strike one already, and he promised to take out the trash from the trunk, but totally forgot. Then he ends up crashing the car.
Oof. I can feel the tension through the pages. What happened next?
The car got towed to the repair shop, but the smell from the rotting garbage was so bad they refused to work on it. He broke his promise about the car, broke his promise about the trash, and created a stinky situation for everyone involved. Talk about a major RBA withdrawal.
Wow, I bet his dad was not thrilled. It really shows how even seemingly small things, like keeping your word, can have a ripple effect on your relationships.
Absolutely. It's about building trust and demonstrating that you're reliable and considerate. Now, speaking of consideration, let's move on to Habit 4. Think win-win.
Ah, yes, the art of compromise. But is it really possible to always find a solution where everyone wins?
It's not always easy, but it's definitely a more fulfilling and sustainable approach than constantly battling for your own way. You know, win-win is about collaboration, not competition. It's about understanding that even in those situations where your interests seem opposed, there's often a creative solution that can benefit everyone.
I get the idea. But sometimes it feels like there's just not enough to go around. Like if there's only one spot on the team or one scholarship available, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose.
Right. That's where Covey talks about the Toomer twins, comparing and competing. These mindsets, they fuel the idea that there's only a limited pie, and if someone else gets a slice, you get less. But the win-win approach encourages you to see the possibility of expanding the pie, finding creative solutions that create more opportunities for everyone.
I see what you mean. Instead of viewing it as a zero-sum game, you're looking for ways to create a win for everyone involved.
Exactly.
But how do you actually shift out of that competitive mindset? It feels so ingrained, especially in today's world.
Well, the book highlights the importance of recognizing your worth and celebrating the successes of others. He shares a story about a teenage girl who struggled with an eating disorder, constantly comparing herself to others and feeling inadequate.
That's so heartbreaking. And unfortunately, a lot of teens
Yeah.
struggle with body image and comparison.
Mm.
So what helped her to break free from that cycle?
Well, she found the supportive group of friends who accepted her for who she was, and she began to focus on her own strengths and passions. It was a gradual process. But she eventually realized that her worth wasn't tied to her appearance or how she measured up to others.
That's a powerful reminder that true self-worth comes from within, not from external validation.
Right.
And it makes me think about habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Seek first to understand, then to be understood. This habit is all about becoming a truly empathetic listener. It's not just about hearing words. It's about understanding the emotions, the needs, the perspectives behind those words.
I think we're all guilty of bad listening habits sometimes, like spacing out during a conversation,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
or just kind of waiting for our turn to talk instead of really engaging with what the other person is saying.
Absolutely. Covey actually outlines 5 poor listening styles, and I bet we've all been guilty of at least one of them.
Okay.
Spacing out, pretend listening, selective listening, word listening, and self-centered listening.
Okay, those names are pretty self-explanatory, but give me an example of each so I can
Okay.
really see if I'm guilty.
Okay, so think back to a recent conversation, maybe with a friend or a family member, where you felt like you weren't really being heard. Maybe their eyes kind of glazed over as you were talking, that spacing out. Or maybe they were nodding and saying, uh-huh, but clearly thinking about something else. Pretend listening.
Oh yeah, I've definitely been on the receiving end of pretend listening. Not a great feeling.
Not a good feeling. And then there's selective listening, where you only hear what you want to hear. Or word listening, where you're so focused on the literal words
Right.
that you miss the underlying message. And of course, there's self-centered listening, where you constantly turn the conversation back to yourself, like you're just waiting for a gap in their story to insert your own anecdote.
Ouch. I'm definitely guilty of that one sometimes. So how do we become better listeners? The kind of listeners who make people feel truly heard and understood.
Well, Covey emphasizes the importance of genuine listening, which means putting aside your own agenda and your own judgments, and truly trying to see things from the other person's perspective.
Okay.
He uses this analogy of mirroring, reflecting back the other person's feelings, and making sure you've grasped their meaning.
That makes me think of therapists. They're so good at reflecting back what you're saying and making you feel understood.
Right, there's a story in the book about this college football player who injured his arm. And he went to the athletic trainer. But before he could fully explain what happened, the trainer jumped in with a diagnosis and a treatment plan.
So the trainer didn't really listen to the player's concerns or to take the time to understand like the specific nature of the injury.
Exactly. And guess what? The treatment actually made the injury worse. And the player ended up avoiding that trainer because he felt unheard and misunderstood.
It's a powerful reminder that even when we have good intentions, if we don't truly listen, we can miss the mark and even cause harm.
Right.
And I think it really highlights the power of empathy, which is essential for habit 6.
Synergize.
Synergy. This is where things get really exciting.
Okay.
Synergy is about the magic that happens when people collaborate effectively, recognizing that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
I love that. It's like when you're working on a group project and everyone brings their unique skills and perspectives to the table, and you end up creating something way more amazing than any one person could have done alone. Yeah, it's about celebrating diversity and recognizing that the different viewpoints can actually lead to more creative and innovative solutions.
Covey uses this analogy of a musical group, where each instrument has its own unique sound.
Mm-hmm.
And when they all harmonize together, they create something truly beautiful.
Right.
Okay, I see what you mean. It's like when a band comes together and each member brings their own talent and their own style, and it blends into this like amazing sound. That wouldn't be possible if everyone played the same instrument or tried to sound exactly the same.
He also shares this anecdote about a group of students who had to build a pumpkin launcher for a physics project.
Okay.
And at first they were all stuck on their own ideas, butting heads, getting frustrated.
Classic group project struggle. What happened? Did they manage to pull it together?
They did. They started to listen to each other. They started to see the value in each other's perspectives. And by combining their ideas, they actually created a launcher that was far more powerful than anything they could have come up with individually. You know, they found that highway, as Covey calls it, that solution that transcends compromise and creates a win for everyone.
That's awesome. It reminds me of that saying, 2 heads are better than one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more than just brainstorming. It's about creating a space where everyone feels safe
Right.
to share their ideas, even if they're different.
Yeah, it's about fostering this culture of respect and collaboration, which ultimately leads to greater innovation and success.
And speaking of success, achieving our goals and living a fulfilling life requires us to kind of nurture our well-being, which brings us to habit 7. Sharpen the saw.
Sharpen the saw.
Intriguing. What does sharpening a saw have to do with personal effectiveness?
This habit is all about self-renewal, taking care of yourself, your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual well-being, so that you can keep showing up as your best self.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like taking a break to recharge your batteries before you burn out.
Exactly. Covey uses this analogy of a man trying to saw down a tree with a dull saw. He's exhausted, he's frustrated, but he refuses to stop and sharpen the saw.
Oh, totally. I've definitely been there.
Yeah.
Pushing myself to the limit, neglecting my own needs, and then wondering why I feel so drained and unproductive. It's like trying to run a marathon.
Right.
Without any water or fuel.
And habit 7 reminds us that self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. It's about recognizing you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to take care of yourself so you can show up fully for the people and the things you care about.
So what are some of the key areas that we need to focus on when we're sharpening our saws?
Well, it really encompasses 4 dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual.
Okay.
So let's start with the physical. This is about nourishing your body with healthy food, getting enough sleep, and moving your body regularly. And it's not about striving for some unrealistic body image. It's about feeling good and having the energy to do the things you love.
So ditch the all-nighters fueled by pizza and energy drinks, and opt for a good night's sleep and a balanced meal.
That's a great start. And exercise doesn't have to be a chore. Find activities you enjoy, whether it's dancing, swimming, hiking, playing a sport, and make them a regular part of your routine.
And what about mental renewal?
Yeah.
There's some ways to keep our minds sharp and engaged.
Reading is fantastic for this. And it doesn't have to be all textbooks and serious stuff. Pick up a novel, explore different genres, lose yourself in a good story. It's about feeding your curiosity and expanding your knowledge.
Covey shares this story about a young man who struggled in school but loved science fiction. And reading those books really sparked his imagination and his love for learning, ultimately leading him to pursue a career in science.
It's a reminder that learning can be fun, and it doesn't have to happen only within the confines of a classroom.
And speaking of learning, if you're enjoying this deep dive, hit that subscribe button to keep the insights coming.
Yes, definitely subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes where we unpack more wisdom from amazing books.
Now, what about emotional and social renewal?
Well, this dimension is all about building strong, supportive relationships, learning to express your emotions in healthy ways, and taking time for self-reflection.
Okay.
Covey emphasizes the importance of developing your emotional intelligence, which includes understanding and managing your own emotions, as well as empathizing with others.
So it's not about bottling up your feelings
Right.
or pretending to be happy all the time.
Right.
It's about learning to recognize, understand, and express your emotions in a constructive way.
Exactly. And journaling can be a great tool for this. It's a safe space to process your thoughts and your emotions, to track your progress, and to gain self-awareness. And of course, nurturing healthy relationships with friends and family and mentors is crucial for emotional well-being.
It's about having people
Yeah.
that you can trust,
Yeah.
people who support you, and people who challenge you to grow.
Exactly.
And finally, there's the spiritual dimension. This is about connecting with something bigger than yourself, whether that's through religious practices,
Yeah.
spending time in nature, meditating, or engaging in acts of service.
Right.
I think a lot of people, especially teenagers, might shy away from that word spiritual.
Yeah.
What does spiritual renewal really mean in this context?
It's about finding your center, that place of peace and purpose that guides your actions and gives your life meaning. It's about tapping into that inner wisdom and aligning your actions with your values.
It's like remembering what truly matters amidst all the noise and distractions of everyday life.
Right. There's a story in the book about a teenager who found solace in this secluded river spot. It became their sanctuary, a place where they could escape the stress of their home life
Yeah,
and reconnect with
I
themselves.
love that image, finding that peaceful place, that inner sanctuary, where you can recharge and refocus. And it makes me think about the importance of taking breaks, even short ones, to just be present and connect with that inner stillness.
Yeah, and let's not forget the power of laughter.
Yeah.
Covey emphasizes that laughter is a potent form of emotional renewal. It reduces stress, it releases endorphins, and it strengthens our connections with others.
So watch a funny movie, hang out with people who make you laugh, Find the humor in everyday situations. It's good for the soul.
And as we wrap up our exploration of the 7 habits, I want to emphasize that these habits aren't just for teenagers. They're for anyone who wants to live a more purposeful and fulfilling life.
They're timeless principles that can help us to navigate challenges, build stronger relationships, and create a life that's aligned with our values.
They really are. And whether you're a teen figuring out who you are or an adult seeking more balance and meaning in your life, these habits really do offer a roadmap for personal growth and fulfillment.
So true. And, if you're feeling stuck or overwhelmed or just like you're going through the motions, I think revisiting these habits can be a great way to kind of hit the reset button and get back on track.
Absolutely. And remember, it's about progress, not perfection. So start small, pick 1 or 2 habits that really resonate with you, and focus on implementing those consistently.
I love that advice. Because it's easy to get overwhelmed when you're trying to change everything at once.
Right.
It's much more sustainable to focus on small, consistent changes over time.
Yeah.
It's kind of like building a muscle, right?
That's a great analogy.
You don't start by lifting the heaviest weight. You gradually increase the resistance as you get stronger.
Exactly. And just like with physical fitness, having a support system can make all the difference. So don't be afraid to reach out to a trusted friend or a family member or a mentor or a counselor. Having people to cheer you on and to hold you accountable can really help you to stay motivated and overcome those obstacles.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today. Out of all 7 habits, is there one that you think our listeners should really focus on
Yeah.
as a starting point?
Based on our deep dive today, I think focusing on habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, could be incredibly impactful. We've talked about how crucial listening is for building strong relationships, for resolving conflicts, and even for achieving synergy.
It makes sense that you would highlight that one. It seems like so many of the other habits,
Right.
building trust in relationships, thinking win-win, synergizing, they all kind of depend on that foundation of understanding.
Exactly. And it's a skill that will serve you well in every area of your life, from personal relationships to your academic and professional success. It's about becoming a more empathetic and compassionate person, which ultimately leads to a richer and more fulfilling life.
So listeners, if you're ready to take on this challenge, really commit to listening to the people around you. Put aside your own thoughts and judgments and try to see the world through their eyes. You might be surprised at what you learn, the connections that you deepen, and the positive impact it has on your relationships.
It's about opening yourself up to new perspectives, to deeper understanding, and to a greater sense of connection with the people around you.
That's it for our deep dive into the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens by Sean Covey. We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and maybe even a little challenging. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe to Book Summary Podcast for more thought-provoking book summaries. And be sure to share your thoughts and takeaways in the comments below.
We'd love to hear from you.
What resonated with you most? What habit are you committing to practicing this week? Let us know. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep aiming for that awesome life.